Chère éminence, excellence, je ne sais pas exactement qui est là et je regrette énormément de ne pas venir moi-même, mais je serai à Toronto. C'est un peu loin de venir seulement pour parler au sujet des langues. J'aurais assez de problèmes au Canada pour commencer. Alors, je voulais seulement vous saluer pour commencer. Bonjour, guten Morgen, good day, bom dia, et last but certainly not least, Jonapod for the Magyar Ország. Language is a fascinating thing. Perhaps you'll forgive me if I break into English to start with. I can always go back to French when I see a clear road ahead of me. But language is already a very difficult thing. I was brought up in England, and consequently, as I write in English, when I make a mistake in English, everybody thinks I'm trying to refresh the language, which is very flattering. When I make a mistake in French or German, ils savent exactement que c'est une erreur. C'est un Fehler. So I speak English whenever possible, so that I may refresh as much language as possible during what I have to say. Language has always been fascinating to me because I was born in exile, really. I was born in London, but without a drop of English blood, and even with a telltale fon in front of my name, which I never used, but at school I was forced to. And this meant that not long after the First World War, when little boys wanted to be antagonistic, they accused me of having lost the First World War personally. And when they saw they'd gone a bit too far, they cheered me up by saying that their fathers had told them that the sanitary conditions in the French trenches next to them were not nearly as good as those in the German trenches they overran. Since my mother was of French origin, this didn't really make much difference to me, didn't cheer me up at all. So I was always a slightly outsider, and I thank God for it. I believe personally that diasporas, even personal diasporas, are very good things. They're not something to wail about because you have a much better chance. You have to struggle from the beginning. You begin to know, to find your own place in whatever society you're in. And it makes an unerhörlicher Unterschied. Ich bin ethnisch sehr schmutzig. I'm I'm filthy ethnically. And very proud of it. And I cherish all the different bloods in my bloodstream. And I should not know what to do without them. I think, therefore, I always thought ethnic cleansing as an idea was absolutely absurd. Now I think it's criminal. It's such a silly idea so soon after Hitler to start that again. And it really, you can see the result in dog shows, where the highly bred dogs with the ears the right length and the nose the right temperature are all die zittern von good breeding. They're shivering all the time. And in the street, the mongrels that have no place in the dog show are highly intelligent and know exactly what to do and open doors with their noses, bring slippers and newspapers and do all sorts of other things that most highly bred dogs find it difficult to understand. Well, we always have references in nature. I always believed that the Tower of Babel was a blessing. I don't see it as a barrier between the intercourse of peoples. It's a blessing simply because if we all understood each other, we would have destroyed the world a long time ago. It meant that even the most backward and obtuse statesman could understand immediately what the other person was saying, and that would have been disaster. It needs the cordon sanitaire of translators, who are much underestimated. Now, I find them extremely valuable because very often, I'm sure, in history, they misinterpreted the words of statesmen and therefore saved a very dangerous situation for the world. I'm sure of that because as a visitor to the United Nations, whenever I'm in New York, and having watched some of the debates going on there, and listening to the little boxes which the translators use, I've often noticed that even with unprepared speeches, the translators have overtaken the orators and are waiting patiently to be rejoined at the end of a sentence by whatever the orator has to say. And the translators under those conditions are really very rarely wrong. They know a conventional mind when they hear it, and they interpret it to all their worth, and good luck to them. I was very impressed at the beginning of the changes in Moscow to be present at the peace conference initiated by Mr. Gorbachev in Moscow, where he suddenly stopped in the middle of this enormous hall of the Soviets where so many important and dangerous things had happened. He suddenly stopped dead and said, "Am I going too fast for the interpreters?" And the interpreters look at each other shyly like a jury. Yes, you are. And Gorbachev said, "It's my fault. I'm terribly sorry. I get so carried away with my own ideas, I don't realize it. And if it happens again, don't mind, interrupt me by all means, because it's essential I get my message across, and I can't do it without your help." This was not only extremely clever, but was also intelligent, because it showed that he had great respect for the interpreters, and he said he couldn't do his job without them, because he couldn't be translated into all the different languages. And it was extremely impressive, I must say. It showed a man who was at that moment at the top of whatever tree he was climbing, and still he had a word of consideration for people that were doing a more limited job, but either doing it well or not, but at least it had to be done efficiently. He had to give them every possible chance to understand what he was saying. This is, to my mind, tremendously important. Language in itself has certain keys. For instance, in the Latin languages, I noticed, because I tried to learn them, I'm helped by having a French wife, alors je parle français à la maison, même elle me corrige très souvent parce que l'idée du gendre est très étranger aux Anglais. Ils conduisent une vie assez neutre, sauf quelques moments de la vie qui sont naturellement très chers à eux. Mais normalement, c'est absolument neutre. Alors, ça facilite la tâche parce que avec les gendres, on doit passer deux fois si c'est le rêve ou la rêve ou non, ça doit être le rêve. La rêve, ça une sonorité curieuse. La liberté, oui, sûrement ça.